Today, we are going over the best 10 ideas from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. What's up, guys? Clark back again from clarkdanger.com, and I wanted to start this new series every Tuesday. We're going over the best books out there and their best 10 ideas. So we're going to bang these videos out once a week, hopefully spend 10 minutes or less on the book and just condense those 300 or so pages down into a 10-minute video so we can learn better, grow better, and develop ourselves. To kick it off, I thought we'd go back to one of the American classic leadership personal development books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I got the sun-bleached, very rare thrift store edition. I think this is the first edition, written by Stephen Covey. Some people coin this as the best leadership personal development book of all time. So it's got a track record. Let's get into it. I'll show you the best 10 ideas on the 7 habits of highly effective people. So the first 7 big ideas that we're going to talk about are, surprise, surprise, the 7 habits. Let's walk through each one of them, starting with the first one. This is be proactive. Now, an easy way to find out about proactive, what that means, is to look at the opposite. What is the opposite of proactive? Well, if proactive is getting out there, doing things yourself, the opposite is to be reactive, responding to things. Stephen Covey goes over that there's a stimulus response gap. So when something happens to you, and then the response there's a gap in between there. So someone gives you a dirty look, all right, that's the stimulus. Well, there's a gap between the response. Now, if you're a reactive person, the response might be to scowl back or roll your eyes at them, or to shoot off a text gossiping about that person, or to think a negative thought in your head. But if you're a proactive person, you step back, you realize that that's just a stimulus, and you choose your more empowered response. Basically saying that when bad things happen to us, that's just a stimulus. And the more time we can take in between our response and become aware of our response, the more proactive we will be instead of reactive. There's a saying where focus goes, energy flows. That's really true here. Don't focus on the problem, focus on the goal of where you want to go, or don't focus on how bad something is. Try and focus on what you want instead of what you don't want. All right, that's the first one, be proactive. The second habit is to begin with the end in mind. Stephen Covey has the exercise called the funeral exercise. Sounds morbid. I promise it is very beneficial and actually positive. Picture this. You're walking into a church or cathedral and you see everyone dressed in black. You realize it's a funeral. And so you walk up to the front row and you look at people around you and you know all these different people. You start to scratch your head and say, what's going on here? So you walk up to the casket, you look in and you realize it's your funeral. That's a shock. So you look at the brochure that you were handed and you see that there are 4 speakers at your funeral. There's someone from your family, there's someone from your work, there's someone from your friends, and there's someone from your community. Now, the exercise he gives with beginning with the end in mind, what do you want those 4 people to say about you at your funeral? Basically saying that, look, if you were gone today, what do you want your life to say about you? Well, it's a good idea to begin with that in mind and start acting like you want your life to be one day today. So, for example, if you want your kids to get up there and say he was the best father, he always made time for me, or he played catch with me every Sunday, or he was a great husband, if that's your wife or whomever, you got to start acting like that today, otherwise it's not going to happen. Likewise, if you want your coworker to get up there and say he was the hardest working person at the office, or he always had a sense of direction, well, we can do that today and begin with the end in mind. So what do you want your life to look like 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, 30 years down the road? And if you start today implementing some of those things, like you want to be a fit person, for example, in 15 years you want to be there for your kids. Well, if you eat Cheetos and Pop-Tarts, you're not going to be that fit person. But if you exercise, do your kale salads, do your smoothies, your protein shakes, what have you, that's going to get you to where you want to be because you have the end in mind. All right. I'll link down a really good commencement speech by Neil Gaiman. What did he write? He wrote that Caroline book. Talked about him in another video on this channel. And he says his whole thing is make good art, right? Whatever your art is, can be poetry, can be creative marketing stuff. That's not important. What's important is that you keep going with whatever your work is and you make it the best you can. And he says that success in life is like a mountain, right? And you're trying to climb that mountain and you can see the top and you have to climb up it. Now that mountain's really hard to climb still, but as long as you can see the top of that mountain, you know where you're headed, and that's really encouraging. Where it gets murky and dangerous is if it's clouded over, you can't see the top of the mountain, and then you get discouraged because you don't know how tall it is. I'm sure you've had this if you've gone on a hike. I've gone in the Pacific Northwest. Climbing a mountain through the clouds is one of the most discouraging things because you don't know where you're going. But if you can see the top, if you can see the summit, you know that that's your end in mind and you can get up there easier. Habit number 3 is put first things first. And I like the quote. I'll credit the person in the link below. I don't remember off the top of my head. It said, things that matter most must never be put at the mercy of things that matter least. So it's all about getting priorities in life. One thing I like, instead of to-do lists, I like not to-do lists. So if you're going to put first things first, what needs to get done? Well, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, checking YouTube for me, all those things don't belong at the top of my to-do list. I would put them on a not to-do list. They suck my time away. They suck my joy away. So what are the first things you need to put first? And one more point on this, not to drone on this point too long, it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you identify one thing a day and call it your most important task, that's a really good way you can put first things first. So ask yourself, if everything else failed today, what's the one thing I need to do to feel like I had a productive day? That's your most important task. Try and do it to the best of your ability. It's a great way you can put first things first. Habit number 4, think win-win. Whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whether you're negotiating a salary, what have you, there's going to be potential outcomes that leave people with one of the 5 scenarios. There's win-win, you both walk away happy. There's lose-lose, you both walk away not getting what you want. There's win-lose, someone gets what they want, someone doesn't. There's lose-win, you lose, they win. And then there's just win. Now, Stephen Covey in the book thinks that there's even a superior outcome, which is win-win or no deal. So where both parties can walk away happy from something, feel like they've won, otherwise they don't do the deal in the first place. And I like this point a lot because it teaches us, it kind of reminds me that it's important to cooperate and not always compete. And that's something with Kegley Co. back there, my hair products. You know, my brother and I, we started this company selling hair products, and there's other people doing what we do, right? That's no secret. It's not proprietary. You can find recipes online. So instead of trying to compete with everyone, if you cooperate, you're able to reach their audience, they're able to reach your audience, and the whole thing works better. So instead of like taking the old school mentality with business, which is crush your competitor, smear them, do political ads that are negative. If you cooperate with them, it makes you both look good and you can win-win. All right. Habit number 5, seek first to understand, then be understood. Now, for this one, I'm going to tell you about the Boys and Girls Club I work at. This one I have used many times over there. Basically saying in this habit that when you want to understand the other person's point of view first, then you can be understood. And why is this beneficial? Isn't it beneficial to get your point out there? Well, that's the default setting most of us are on, myself included, right? We want to be heard. We want to get our point across. We want to talk. Sometimes we get in the habit of not even listening to the person because we're worried about what we're going to say next, right? But Stephen Covey says that if we really want to have a good communication with that person, It's better to let them talk first, understand it, and now we're in a position to not only respond better because we understand what the other person's saying, but they'll also feel like we're a more empathetic listener and like us more. It's really, really cool, and it works. So my Boys and Girls Club story, I work with middle schoolers, and so they're constantly coming up telling me, so-and-so did this, Clark, so-and-so threw that ball at me, did you see that? And instead of me wanting to go into lecture mode, or me wanting to say, well, did you think of this, or that can't happen again? Really unacceptable. If I let them get their blah out there first, regardless of if they're right or wrong, what I've noticed is that they listen to me more. So if I had a conversation with them before and they didn't feel heard, then it doesn't really matter what I'm gonna say. In their minds, they're not listening because they have so much stuff in their own head. So if I say, wait a minute, I'm gonna seek to understand, so let them talk, then be understood, man, the conversation's way different. You can see it in their eyes. They understand what you're saying and why it wasn't okay to throw the ball at the person, or why it's not okay to scream in the room when everyone else is reading. But if I didn't let them say their thing first, it's like talking into a wall, all right? So that's a really good tip. Seek first to understand, then be understood. Habit number 6 is synergize. This is where 1 + 1 = 3. And in the book, Stephen Covey goes over an example that if you have an apple tree without a ladder and you have two people, where'd my phone go? Oh well. You have two people and you both can't reach the apple on the tree. Well, if you work together, 1 + 1 = 3. What does he mean? He means if one person stands on your shoulders, now you can get what you really want, which are the apples, and share them together. But again, if you said kind of the win-win or no deal approach, or the lose-lose, if you said, we're competitors, I want the apples, he wants the apples, then you're not going to get any. But if you cooperate with them, now you both get the darn apples, which is what you want in the first place, all right? That's synergy, putting your heads together and creating a common goal. The last habit number 7, is sharpen the saw. This one, Stephen Covey goes over in the book, a story about two guys cutting down a tree. And one guy's just hacking away at the tree. He's cutting it down with the saw. He's really going for it. And the other guy is just sharpening his saw, sharpening his axe. And the guy who's sharpening his axe goes over to the other one who's just working away. And he says, your blade's kind of dull. Why don't you sharpen it? And the man looks at him and he says, what do you mean sharpen the saw? I'm too busy cutting down this tree. For me, I like this habit because it says take time for you. Sharpen your saw. You got to find out what your saw is. Maybe if you're a musician, your saw is to practice your instrument, right? You're sharpening your saw, you're honing your craft. If you're a painter, your saw is to work on your motor skills to paint that painting. If you're a teacher, maybe your saw is to develop yourself so you're a better teacher and educate yourself more so you can educate other people. If you're a leader, maybe your saw is to read more of these books so you can lead your people better. All right, whatever your saw is, we need to constantly sharpen it so we can cut down that metaphorical tree or reach our goals better. For me, I've found the best way to sharpen the saw is to journal. That's probably the main theme of this channel. We go back to journaling a lot, not just keeping a diary, not just writing in a journal randomly, but using prompts, questions, methods, sections to really sharpen the saw. And if you want to do that, I'll link up right now in the little cards or the link in the description below. Great way to sharpen your saw is to answer the 11 questions to change your life. It's just a free ebook I threw together with 11 best questions I've ever done to sharpen the saw. Other people have used it. Thousands of people have used it by now. And it's 100% free. All right, lesson number 8 is the 8th habit. His follow-up book, which says that the 8th habit of the highly effective people is to help others find their inner voice and to find your own. So once you've basically achieved your goal, it is your mission to help others do the same. All about giving back, and that so many times a lot of our worry, anxieties, even depression comes from a me focus. And that if we're able to get out of our own head and focus on a we focus or a you focus, then we're less in our own heads and we're more in that present moment. So when we think about the 8th habit of finding our inner voice and helping others do the same, the implications are huge, not just for them, but for us as well. So the secret to living is giving. Help others find their inner voice. That's a cool habit. Habit number 8, it's a bonus. All right, idea number 9 comes from this book. Really cool idea to think about tasks and time management. It is the 4 quadrants. Right here, you have 4 spaces in a square. First is urgent and not urgent. Then vertically, it's important, not important. So you see where there's 4 options. You have urgent and important. These are things that need to get handled now that are really, really important. Then you have urgent but not important. Then you have not important but urgent. And then you have not important and not urgent. He goes over great examples in the book on how to use those 4 quadrants. It's just a really good way to think about tasks, think about productivity, if we're being busy or if we're being productive, and which quadrant our task falls into. So just a really cool tool you can use. The last big point I got from this book, one of my favorites, comes from habit number 2 with beginning and the end in mind. And that the fact he goes over in the book that everything is created twice. Once in your mind, once in reality. This microphone right here, the camera right there, this book, they all existed in our minds, and then we had to actually make them in the physical world. But sometimes the hardest thing is getting out of our own way, is allowing ourselves that first time to get it out of our mind and on paper, to get those dreams out of your mind and in your journal, or whatever you want to do. And so it's just a really cool reality check that, sometimes we think goal setting or believing is all woo-woo, or at least I do, or is overdone or not worth our time. But when we step back and we realize that that is actually creating the first step of whatever it is you want, is blueprinting, getting it on paper, then we're able, it becomes less woo-woo, it becomes more tangible. So I really like that point, blueprinting. Create it the first time on paper, allow yourself that permission to dream. All right, guys, that's it. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you want to pick up the book, check out the link in the description below. I got all the notes listed in there as well with all these habits if you want to look at any of them further. 11 Questions Change Your Life, that free ebook I mentioned where it goes over the best 11 questions you can ask yourself. Sharpen your own saw. That's linked up right down there as well, 100% free. Please leave a comment in the description below. What is your favorite point from this book or this video? What resonated with you? Join the community, join the conversation. I think we got some of the best community on YouTube, some of the most positive people down there. All right, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you back here next week for... Dun, dun, dun. We're going to be doing this guy, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Until then, stop settling, start living. See you later, guys.